Salve homies, and welcome to Acroasis XL, or video 40. Today we're going to be talking about the present passive indicative and its infinitive across all four conjugations. So first let's talk about what are conjugations again, and then what is the present active indicative. So remember, conjugations, you discover which one they are based off of the second principal part of the verb. So first conjugation is ARE, second is long ERE, third is short ERE, which uses the fishhook and takes off the entire ERE, and then you keep the I for IO verbs. And then fourth is IRE, which uses a UNT in third plural. The base endings, of course, remember all of them, first singular is first principal part, and the second principal part minus the RE except for third, which we covered above. O, S, T, mus, tis, inti for them, except for the exceptions that we listed above with third and fourth. Now let's talk about what passive is. Now, passive voice is something we actually use quite frequently in English when we're speaking and when we're writing less formally. In formal writing, we try not to use it, and I'm sure your English teachers have made many a don't use passive voice comment on your papers. But what is passive? What makes something passive? And a passive verb essentially is when the subject and the object switch functions. So the subject becomes the thing affected by the verb, and the object becomes the thing performing the action, rather than the other way around, which is what an active verb does. So what that means is essentially, let's take a look at an example. So in an active sentence, the girl sees the boy. So the girl is performing the action. She is seeing an object, and the object is affected by that action. In a passive sentence, keeping them in the same position, you notice that the action has been reversed. The girl is seen by the boy. In this sentence, the girl is no longer doing the action. She is instead now receiving it upon herself, and it's instead the boy performing the action. He is doing the seeing, and the girl is the one being observed. So that is essentially the difference between active and passive. And I kept it in the same tense so that you can see even the difference with the construction of the verb in English. In English, when we convert sees to is seen, we just add a form of the verb to be and then make the other verb past tense. That is how you form a passive verb in any sense. And in Latin, it's going to be the same way. So let's talk about how we represent this in Latin. First, we're going to use some special endings because Latin loves its endings, as you are very well aware of. So these special endings are going to follow the same rules as the active. The only difference is instead of using OST, mus, tis, unt, we're going to use a different set of endings. Now there is one teeny tiny baby exception in the third conjugation, because you know how third conjugation is, but we'll see it in the example, and it's very small. So R, ris, tor, mor, mini, intor are the new endings that you're going to see. Now the first principal part is still going to be used for the first person singular. Here it's going to add an R to it instead of just leaving it with the O ending. Everything else, it's all going to be second principal part minus RE for first, second, and fourth, and then with UNTR for fourth conjugation. For third conjugation, of course, you're going to take off the whole ERE, and then you're going to add the fishhook with the baby exception we're going to see in a moment. So the next slide is going to show you an example across all four conjugations. This would be very, very important to write down, okay? So take a look at these examples across the conjugations. We have amare, which is the first conjugation verb. We have videre, which is a second conjugation verb. We have dicere, which is a third conjugation verb, and we have audire, which is a fourth conjugation verb. So I've taken the liberty of going through and highlighting the endings for you guys, so you can see where the stem is for all of them. You notice first and second, it's very simple. All you do is take off the RE and then R, ris, tor, more, mini, intor for second singular through third plural. For first singular, you notice it's just the first principal part plus R. And for third conjugation, you notice that we're following the same pattern that we would for active, But the only difference is take a look at second person singular. Instead of iris, which would be what you would expect from fishhook, that I has changed to an E for that one in particular. However, that does not occur in fourth conjugation, which follows the same pattern that it usually does, which is the same as first and second, except in third plural, where it's untor, like with third conjugation. So take a minute, make sure you write this down, pause the video if you need to, and resume it when you're ready. But now let's move on. So how is the translation affected? And essentially, just like you saw with sees versus is seen, it's going to be am, is, or are being verbed. Now the being is optional. You do not have to write it if you don't want to, or if you don't think it makes sense. So let's try and conjugate and translate an example. Laudo, laudare, to praise. So take a moment, pause the video, conjugate and translate each form of this verb in present tense, and then resume when you are ready to check your work. Okay, so now let's take a look. The first one, we should have taken laudo, and then just plopped it down and then added an R to it. So it would be laudor, I am being praised. The next one, laudaris, and for all the other forms, we're going to use laudare, take off the RE, and then add our passive ending, in this case, ris, you are being praised. The next one will add tur, he, she, it is being praised. Then more, we are being praised. Many, you all are being praised. And intor, they are being praised. Now these endings are, ris, tur, more, many, intor. You're going to see them being used not only in present tense, but also in imperfect and in future, which we'll be going over shortly later as well in another video. So these endings will be used again, just like the active endings, you saw them being used again with the st, mus, tis, und showing up over and over and over throughout the different verb tenses. So they are important to remember. Now let's take a look at the infinitive. First, remember what is the infinitive. The present active infinitive, the one that you already know, it's the second principal part of the verb. It translates just as to whatever the verb means. So laudare, to praise, docere, to teach, capere, to seize, scire, to know. Now, when it comes to making it passive, the translation is going to change to be verbed, and the formation is going to be different. So we're still going to start off by looking at the second principal part of the verb. For first, second, and fourth conjugations, they're all going to follow the same rule, which is take off the RE, like you're used to, but add RI instead. So laudari, docere, sciri, to be praised, to be taught, and to be known, respectively. Third conjugation, just like you normally do, take off the entire ERE, and then add an I. So it'll be a shorter form, copy, to be seized or grabbed. So that's the difference. Make sure you've written this down, especially the rules for the infinitive. That concludes this video. If you have any questions, make sure you bring them to class with you tomorrow. We'll be going over it again and doing some examples with it as well and working with it in translation. Make sure you fill out your Google form, and until tomorrow, Wallete omnes.